just listen to that amazing smoky guitar that just draws you in. You can tell that's going to be a special album, whatever the hell it is. Well, what is it? It's the opening notes of the incredible new album from Mourning Beloveth. And that's who we're going to be talking to today in episode 22 of the Metal Insight podcast, recorded and produced by MetalIreland.com.
It may have seemed a sign of hope.
I'm Earl Grey, and in this episode I'm joined by vocalist Darren Moore and guitarist and co-vocalist Frank Brennan from the band Mourning Beloveth to talk about their changing style and the huge influence that everyone from the poet W.B. Yeats to Nick Cave has had on this music. As you know, each of our episodes has a sponsor, and I'm delighted to say that this episode is being sponsored by Van Records from Germany. It's they who are releasing this album, Rust and Bone, and it's out now on their web store and all good other record outlets. Van have it for about €14.99 at the minute with free shipping, and that's an embossed digipack version, really nice version and great to own it on that. But actually, it's not just that. Van have something else that you might have missed and that we want to tell you about. They've just re-released Primordial's classic Dark Romanticism demo on heavyweight clear and black vinyl. Now, I know I certainly missed getting the original copy of this way back in the day, and so many metalers in Ireland would probably love the chance to have this on such an awesome format. Great tunes on there, that we all sort of know from live shows, but maybe we didn't get to own them. So this is your chance to get them on vinyl. So head over to van-records.de. That's van-records.de and pick those up. It's great to be working together, so thank you to Van for sponsoring the Metal Insight podcast. Now, on with the show. The new album from Mourning Beloveth is very, very different from what we're used to from them. It's shorter, it's tonally more varied, and it's full of new ideas. As well, of course, as that catatonic weight that we all know them for, that incredible doom metal atmosphere that we were able to conjure up. So how come this one is different? What was it about the environment this time round that's resulted in such a change? Vocalist Darren kicks us off.
Frank went to Finland for a few months for personal reasons, and when he came back, within the space of 3 or 4 months, we nearly had an album written, and then offer of a tour, and then we tried to get the album recorded before the tour and have it out before the tour. So it was all like sort of a maelstrom in a year, which isn't like us at all, but it sort of, I think it helped us focus with a deadline so quick that this has to be done. And we're not ones to just throw things together just for the sake of it. So I think it actually helped us in a way, I don't know what Frank thinks there. He sees it from another point because he was away, so.
Well, you see, I'm always writing, you see. And when, I had the God Eater song, most of that had been put together even before I left for Finland. And one of the riffs from the Mantle Tomb was in my head, but I wasn't really sure where it was going to work. But when I came back from Finland, I had a bit more focus on what was going to be the outcome of the songs on musical level. Like the God Eater song had been basically put together in my head, but then me and Darren started to rearrange it and process the song, and it changed a bit, but it's still the same character of what was in my head at the beginning. So basically it was longer than a year really processing the music in my head before we actually brought it to the studio and really put the songs together.
It may have seemed a sign of hope.
God Eater to me is very much one of the most impressive songs you've ever written, because it's really quite uncharacteristic. I suppose I'll break it down bit by bit. The opening will be almost an entirely new tonality to long-time listeners of Mourning Beloveth, but must reflect some new influences that you've been absorbing, whether those have been in Finland or just in new music or something. Tell me a wee bit about it, because that opening section is just so smoky and dark and just it's really incensey or something. It's so Moorish. What was that about? It's kind of
Well, even like the piece of guitar that's under the first vocal, like that just tormented my head because there's no real timing to it. It's a really free flowing kind of a, Tim. Even when Tim was trying to drum to it, it wasn't working, so I had to leave it loose on its own. And it had a different vocal melody also. But actually, just maybe a month before we were recording, Darren had given me a Nick Cave album. What was the one you gave me, Darren? The one with that white lovely eyes song. The Push the Sky one. And I just heard a couple of it's just the way he phrases these words sometimes. And it just triggered something in my head, and I rearranged the way I was going to sing it. Just based on a whole Nick Cave influence, that just his phrasing alone, just kind of, oh yeah, that's what I need to do there. And it just completely changed how I approached the singing of it, which completely blew me away as well, because I wouldn't normally be influenced by Nick Cave or anything like that.
It's almost there's almost like a sort of I wouldn't like to say a sort of priestly delivery in it, but or monkish or something, but there's something else there, isn't there?
Well, it was meant to be a lament in some way, like it's kind of a mournful thought, I mean, more so than singing in my normal singing voice. It's more full throat and powerful stuff. But for this, it needed a bit more of just character. That's what it needed, just character to shape it with this piece of guitar. So
it moves on to usher in what we all know by now as Mourning Beloveth's well-established sound, a crushing despondency. In many ways, their bread and butter for the last 2 decades. But what's new this time is the way they've gone at it. Have a listen to this. This is a little snippet from the play Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett, the play that looks at the human condition through the lens of boredom and waiting and nothingness. Take a listen.
The net. He thinks he's entangled in a net. Nobody comes. Nobody goes. It's awful.
Now take a listen to this.
It just sort of encapsulates the whole of the Waiting for Godot play,
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the whole lyrical approach was basically that we're surrounded by spin and propaganda of every single thing you can think of, and yet if you just go back to the basics of everything and question yourself, question everything you read and see. Not being force-fed into you, but by actually sitting back and looking at it yourself, that you learn a lot more than being fed it,
I read a great quote recently, which was, you should never read newspapers, just read fiction because you'll actually learn more.
That's very true, yeah. I mean, Noam Chomsky, that?
Of course, yeah.
MIT modern-day philosopher says that, there's 5 filters before something gets into the media, And it depends on the owners, and it depends on the editor, and it depends on this and this. And it's like, sometimes you read pieces in the paper, you see something on TV, and you think it's the truth. And if you go look for it yourself, it's what?
Mm.
And I remember actually Frank coming that he said the first main riff in God Eater. He came over. We were struggling with the song for a while, and although it was there, it wasn't. None of us were 100% happy,
But it's the brutal repetition of that thought, isn't it? It's just that you ram it home, and it's actually the indifference of the thought. It's actually striking because it's not like you're ramming home a really important or powerful assertion. It's not that. You're ramming home the fact that actually there's nothing going on.
Exactly.
Exactly. This is what life is and existence is like. It's this repetition of nothingness and just drifting in a cloud of vapor, and when you as we say, the whole media spin, we're we're just surrounded and encapsulated with media of every description and media spin, but at the end of the day, like when we're all dead and buried, nothing still has happened. Nothing has changed. Nobody comes, nobody goes. You know.
Well, your music has changed because where this track goes is obviously into a huge burst of really quite surprising speed and rage. Now, it's not the first time. Am I correct in thinking it's not necessarily the first time that you guys have ever done a blast beat? I think you've maybe done it once before. Is that right?
We had a kind of on the single that we done before, the part 1 single that we released with. Remember, that was a split with Lunar Gate. That was, well, it wasn't really a blast beat, but it was a fast beat, alright. Yeah.
But this is very much, it's an explosion of energy and vigor, the like of which we really haven't heard Mourning Beloveth do before. So, what did it take to get Timmy to arise from his normal stupor and get into that one?
Well, to be honest with you, that was me trying to feed into Tim's. See, Tim he likes to play fast sometimes, just even if it's just jamming around and riffing and acting the bollocks in the rehearsal studio.
Is he secretly into speed metal? Is that what you're trying?
I think he's too busy listening to Gamma Ray or something.
I was just going to say it. He's too busy listening to Gamma Ray. But you know what I mean? And I said to myself, Jez, we've been playing all these slow riffs, and I was sitting at home and this fast riff was coming into my head the whole time, and I said, we can't really use this. But then I found myself bringing it into the rehearsal room and seeing how it was going to work out. But see, the whole concept of that song was to start off and just build up into a frenzy of just pure self-destruction inside, you know. It was to reach a crescendo and just fall off the cliff.
Have you played it live yet? Have you played it in front of an audience yet?
We played it on most nights, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
And do they know it yet? Well, I suppose the record's only just coming out, so maybe they don't know it yet.
Yeah, it's just out, yeah.
Yeah. Well, look,
but everybody was blown away by the song every time we played it as well, though. You know, people say, "Oh my God, what's that song?" You know.
It's not even the fact that it's a blast beat. It's the fact that it's actually a good riff.
Well, yeah, that's always more important, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and Frank had it and was jamming it out at rehearsal for ages, and I hooked on to it straight away because I could get that old early 90s fucking Swedish bands with the swarming fucking riff going around and that creating its own atmosphere, you know, and loads of discordant beats going on. But to me, what it also does, it sort of mimics what we're being pushed and fed every day, and what we need to do is take time out, and that's why straight away after that you have that really slow acoustic bit just to clear your head, you know.
But I feel another big the sort of net effect of both the surprising start of the song and the surprising end of the song is that it really sort of changes the definition of your music. You know, I hate to keep bundling in with Primordial and stuff, but obviously what we know, I know, but what they have done is they have, you know, it's not quite clear, you know, what kind of metal they actually make anymore. It's just kind of music now, much like yourselves with this album. Now it's just music now, isn't it? I mean, of course it's doom. I mean, of course it's doom, but it's just a wee bit more than that now with the way that this particular track develops. And I wonder, would you contemplate going further, or you know, maybe making a future album maybe slightly more varied from your more typical doom beats?
We've been for the past on tour, especially when we were drinking every night. We were talking about what we're doing in the future, and it's a lot. Everything. I mean, the door is open for anything, but it always has been, you know. We just write music for ourselves and to enjoy it ourselves.
But come on, you should. I mean, you know, you've in theory, you should have known this for 15 of your 20-year history now, at least. Was that not self-evident a long time ago? Like after you released your first album.
Yeah, very true. Very true. It was. I suppose you're always questioning everything you do, you know, everything, and you just try and push it another bit and push it another bit and push it another bit. And as we grow as people and grow as a band, we become a lot more comfortable with what we do, and we realise that why not this? Why not an acoustic set? Why not? This is what we do anyway, so why not just put it in there? And I think, as you said, our fans are our fans now, and they're either gonna, people either like us or don't like us. You know, there's no sort of in between ground. You know.
Although, in a way, I do think actually that you could attract a completely new cohort with this album, because it does now straddle the genres in a way that I look to this and I think of, I know obviously your own Van, which is a great home, and actually it is quite representative of the kind of stuff Van do. But I would even look at stuff like there's Dark Descent, or there's a couple of labels that this could easily sit on, because it actually straddles a lot of stuff.
Yeah. But see, well, you look back at the other albums. There's a lot more heavy laden music. It's very long songs, and some of it is a lot like a wall of guitars.
Mm-hmm.
So this time, like especially after we done Transmissions and Formless.
Oh yeah, that was a big.
That was the kind of an eye opener in a way, that we said, well, we can approach music a small bit differently. We don't have to be confined to two guitars chugging out a wall of sound, just, you know what I mean, like in this swirling mass of guitars. We could say, well, we can break it down and make it more, as we say, like take the bite out of it, just soften it a bit. Because you look at the lyrics that were the excerpts from 1984 and Transmissions, they wouldn't have worked on real heavy song. You know what I mean? It needed that lonesome, fresh breath that carried the lyrics.
So if we were surprised already by the new tones and styles on this album, well, the surprises keep coming, because near the end of Rust and Bone, a track comes in that's really, really challenging. It's an acoustic reworking of a poem by W.B. Yeats, and not just any poem, a very important poem called Easter 1916. And that poem's really, really challenging, because what Yeats does in that poem, if you haven't read it, you should go and read it, but what he does is he kind of describes his mixed feelings, his mixed emotions about the events of 1916, and how he can't quite come to terms with whether this was a praiseworthy thing or a thing to be criticised. And it's incredibly nuanced. It's an incredibly difficult and challenging poem. So Mourning Beloveth have made this into music, and I put it to Darren and Frank that this was a really bold step, especially this year of all years.
I have a love of the early Irish poets like Yeats and that, and Easter 1916 was one of my favourite poems. But it's Easter 1916, even the name of it, it can be misstrewn for something that it's not. It's more about idealism, and this also fed into what we were doing for years. Writing music, you don't make money, you don't do anything, you go play gigs and you write music and you have fun, and that's what it is, you know.
Yeah, it's too long a sacrifice making stones of many hearts around the Irish metal scene.
Yeah. But the lyrical, the passage of the poem, right? The wordings was so tied into the rest of the concept of the album. You see, that's how it fell into place.
Well, I wanted to ask actually, because one of the things that struck me was that it's very valiant. It's very brave actually to try and represent that poem in any other form other than the perfect original.
It was terrifying.
But so to take that on is very brave. But what I noticed was that you talked about the start of God Ether being outside of rhythm and stuff like that, and I know that making poetry fit over a beat and stuff is always going to take a little bit of artistic or musical license like that. But the crucial thing is where you chose to start the lyric, because anyone that knows the poem knows that he starts off talking about his mates down the club and how he like to take the piss of these boys and stuff. That doesn't quite fit with your rendition. So you've chosen to come in at a very specific point. Tell me about how you made the choice about where to come in and why.
That was the passage that Darren had showed me before. He loved this passage of that poem, and it just jumped out of the page like, oh, this suits, like, you know what I mean? Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of your heart. Like any other part of the poem, it wouldn't have had the same impact coming in. You know what I mean? Like the different verses are different parts of the cycle of his thought pattern. But when he hits that verse,
well, that's when the doubt creeps in. You see, isn't it?
That's
yeah.
The main crux of the poem is how he's changed his attitude. If you actually read the poem as a whole, it's about him and his changing attitude, and probably Ireland and his changing attitude back then. You know, so to us, it's not about. Now, in fairness, a week after we decided to do it, and it was Pádraig's. It's actually Pádraig's riff right throughout it, and it just fitted it perfectly. It has that fucking steeped in, I won't say Irish folklore, but steeped in just Irish history. That riff made us feel, and it's perfect for it.
I mean,
like we weren't trying to be Irish and
but a week,
you know.
In fairness, a week later we said, "Fuck, next year is the 100-year anniversary."
yeah, but the last thing Yeats would have wanted, you know, I mean, he would have been appalled if it was a fiddly D number, wouldn't it? But that Darren, sorry, you've just hit upon it. I was going to ask you, did it give you pause for thought whether or not to stick it on this at all?
No,
I was afraid of it at first, but then when you hear the track tied into the album, it just works perfectly. You know, it sounds a bit more focused than I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be like more singer songwriter, just a lonesome guitar and just a single voice.
well,
But then
go ahead, sorry.
But then when we started doing the vocal harmony and a layer, the song expanded. You know what I mean? For me, it did anyway. I still am nervous of people's reaction to it because of what it is.
Right on.
You know what I mean?
Truthfully, when we were talking about it and had the passage, I never tried to influence Frank on how to sing something because of the talent he has. You don't need to, and I have nothing. So you know, but for this one, I was thinking that, you know, Sinead O'Connor did a cover of the Foggy Dew and a few other people, and it's very haunting. And I didn't want to mention it to him, but for once I did, and I was thinking, he won't do it that way. And if he does it the way he can do it, which he did, to me it's perfect. I had no. When I heard him at rehearsal the first time with it, I just went, no, I'm happy doing that. That's perfect.
The other thing that marks this out as slightly different from Mourning Beloveth is that it's shorter. It's about 40 minutes, which, as anyone who's sat through all of Mourning Beloveth's previous albums knows, might just come as a little bit of light relief. And it turned out they put it together quite quickly as well. Not that impacted on the intensity of any of it. And look, you cracked this entire thing out in 6 days in the studio. I mean, I typically, I don't know, people tend to think recording an album these days is a 2 to 3 week residential with playstations and, you know, country lodges. But I mean, 6 days isn't a long time, so you must have distilled quite some discipline and energy into this whole affair.
You get used to recording also, but I remember when we done Murder Circus, we went to the studio for 3 weeks, and it was like, what the fuck are we doing 3 weeks in the studio? You know, but then it turned out we were getting tight at the end anyway. But this was such a shorter piece of work compared to like Formless is 80 minutes long, like. So we said, we're not going to need 10 days. It's only 3 songs and 2 little passages.
Yeah.
Chris gets paid for 8 hours. Chris Fielding in Skyhammer gets paid for 8 hours a day, but in fairness, he does probably 16 to 20 hours a day, every day. Yeah. So it's more like 12 days, really, you know. So.
Yeah, actually, one wouldn't envy the life of a studio engineer, except that they get paid quite well, but they really, they do, as a rule, put in far too much time.
I mean, we went to the studio after running through, like we used to rehearse the full album in one. and we could do it 2 or 3 times a night, whereas previously we might get on Formless or on a Disease, we might get 2 or 3 songs done at a rehearsal, you know, so that was a lot easier as well.
I think it benefits from being more digestible. There's no doubt about that. You know, it is shorter. The acoustic stuff does break it up better, and actually it makes the heavy stuff heavier and it makes the lighter stuff lighter, you know. And
I hate when bands come along and say this next album is better, heavier, and stronger,
of course.
you know, faster, whatever the fuck, you know. It's different. It's something else again, but I think we've done it with every album.
Yeah.
It seems to be more. It's easier to see this time because of probably the acoustic track more so, you know, and the two acoustic passages. But every album had a step in a different direction for us, you know. Like from Dust, those Dust songs were sitting around for 3 or 4 years, 5 years before we were
9 years.
Yeah, actually. And
so
like a year and a half, 2 years there, we recorded Sulcus, and that brought the Dust and Sulcus to such a point that we couldn't do any more with it. And we went to a Murder Circus and did something completely different, really dirty, raw, cold atmosphere, and we realised it was actually probably too far. Or what happened was probably there wasn't enough quality control on the album, so Disease was sort of just heads down, just miserable fucking shit. Sorry for the language, but each time we think about what we do at the start and then just let it naturally flow. But there is a step in a different direction each time. This one probably just a little bit more. Maybe we're getting older. We're listening to a lot of other stuff, and I always have, you know. But I suppose this time we all are, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas I've always been massive Nick Cave, Leonard Cohen fan, Porrick, massive Tom Waits fan. Frank has been listening to a lot of it recently as well, and I think, I mean, even when we were recording Formless, I think the only probably music we listened to was Tom Waits for 2 weeks. Blame Porrick for that, but it brings a certain, I won't say in the riff, but it brings a certain feel to what you're doing. It just seeps through, you know.
What an incredible album. That's it for episode 22 of the Metal Ireland podcast. Our huge thanks once again to Van Records for sponsoring this episode. If you want to know how to sponsor it, just get in touch, mi@metalireland.com, mi@metalireland.com, and we can talk to you about that. Get your message in here. Now, you have to pick up this album from Mourning Beloveth, so head over to van-records.de. That's van-records.de. Take a look at the new Mourning Beloveth. €14.99 includes free shipping. Also check out their re-release of the Primordial Dark Romanticism demo on heavyweight vinyl. Take a look at that. But support Van, they're a great label. They've supported us, so go and check them out. We're going to be back shortly with another episode. I'm going to have another intriguing conversation with really some pretty cool musicians in the underground coming up. I don't want to say too much about it just yet, but I've got something special in the works. Anyway, that'll be the next episode. Just one final thing before we're going. There's going to be a new feature coming on Metal Ireland later this week. You're going to be able to buy your own advertising on Metal Ireland. You can use your Facebook photos, your Facebook flyers, your Facebook header graphics, or any graphics you make. You're going to have the choice. You choose what you pay. There'll be a device there that you can choose how long you want an ad to run and how long you want to pay. So it's entirely up to you. So I'll be telling you more about that during the coming week. Pardon me. But I'm going to launch that soon. I'm going to mail you all about it. But I think it's going to be really cool for bands and promoters and stuff like that, because you can, just choose how you do it yourself, and it's all up to you. So over and out for Metal Ireland podcast, the Metal Insight podcast from Metal Ireland, episode 22. I'll see you again soon, and for now, get that Mourning Beloveth album. Over and out.